All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are locked on Falcons. I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I am giving you my rapid reaction to the Falcons' 19-13 loss to the Carolina Panthers in Week 8, as well as talking about the future of Calvin Ridley due to his now extended absence due to a mental health break that he will have moving forward.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, everyone, you are Locked On Falcons. You know me, of course, your host, Aaron Freeman. Used to cover the Falcons for many years, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP. Still going strong, however, on Twitter at falcfans. And, of course, the host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Falcons will feature my rapid reaction to the Falcons' Week 8 loss to the Carolina Panthers. And, of course, we'll be giving out the game summary for those of you that missed the game or need to be reminded of the highs and lows. We'll be giving out grades to different phases of the game, looking at the Falcons' offense, defense, and special teams, and grading each of those units. But a big part of today's conversation will be involving Calvin Ridley, who we discovered Sunday morning would be inactive due to the personal matters that he had been dealing with earlier this season. And we found out a little bit more information on what those personal matters pertain to with his mental health. And we'll talk about that and what that means for Ridley, as well as talk about what that means for the Falcons moving forward. But before we get into all of that, guys, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Falcons your first listen of the day. And of course, Locked On Falcons is free and available on all podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, and Spotify. And now available on YouTube, where you guys can like and subscribe to Locked On Falcons to get the podcast a few hours earlier than normal. Than you would normally get the audio version of the podcast. You can get the video version of the podcast a few hours earlier the night before. So definitely make sure you subscribe to Locked On Falcons on YouTube. So going into this weekend's game, my major concern was the Falcons offense going up against a much better defense in Carolina. Would they take a major step back? And they did. And certainly it didn't help matters that the Falcons had to basically adjust on the fly due to Calvin Ridley being inactive. As I said, we learned early Sunday morning, the team learned early Sunday morning that Ridley would not be suiting up because he was dealing with personal matters, marking the second time now in the past 3 games in which Ridley would sit out due to those reasons. And we didn't know before what exactly was bothering Ridley, but there had been speculation and reports suggesting that it was related to mental health. And we soon discovered Sunday afternoon during the game when Ridley released a public statement talking about what he's been dealing with. And I'll read Ridley's statement. These past few weeks have been very challenging. And as much as I'd like to be on the field competing with my teammates, I need to step away from football at this time and focus on my mental well-being. This will help me be the best version of myself now and in the future. I want to thank my teammates, the entire Atlanta Falcons organization, our great fans, my friends and family for all of their support during this time. So I too will send my support, all the support I can muster in Calvin Ridley's direction as he deals with what he's dealing with. And, this is now an issue that's bigger than football. We saw over the summer several athletes like Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles deal with similar issues. Ben Simmons seems to be going through stuff in the NBA. We saw Lane Johnson just come back for the Eagles after a multi-week absence dealing with his own depression and anxiety issues. Spoke about that on the Fox pregame show. I definitely recommend going and finding that video if you can. We also know that Falcons tight end Hayden Hurst has dealt with a lot of issues in the past with an attempted suicide several years ago when he was playing minor league baseball before coming back and playing football. And, I know there's a vocal group of sort of dissenters, we might call them, that have a dissenting opinion on Calvin Ridley and what the team needs to deal with Calvin Ridley. But I've by and large seen the vast majority of responses being positive and supportive of Calvin Ridley. And I hope that continues moving forward. Having dealt with some mental issues on myself in the past, and I'm sure many of you guys have dealt with them or know people that have, this is something that does go beyond football. And while the bulk of this podcast will be focused on the football side of things, and later in the episode, we'll be talking about some of the issues that Ridley's absence is caused for the Falcons offense on the field on Sunday and what they'll have to work to overcome some of those issues moving forward. I have absolutely no ill will towards Calvin Ridley. I don't blame him at all for those issues. I hope Calvin Ridley continues to get all the love and support that he needs. And I hope if and when he does come back to playing football, he'll be better for it. But, these aren't issues that are going to magically go away. And I'm glad to see that the Falcons as an organization are giving him the space, and all indications are giving him the support that he needs. And I hope the fans follow in their footsteps. So I'm glad to see that we're now operating in an era, I guess you could say, of sports where athletes will continue to get support on a lot of these issues to deal with the battles that they need to deal with. And these are battles that not just athletes have to deal with. These are battles that everyday people have to deal with. So I feel like this is not a situation where, playing sports and making a ton of money makes you immune from mental health issues. And so we'll obviously sort of have to see what the Falcons and Ridley do moving forward, going from here. But again, best wishes from me for both parties. But Sunday, at least as far as the Falcons are concerned, wasn't exactly their best performance. And we'll get into that as we get into the game summary, as we continue today's rapid reaction podcast. But does this sound familiar? You have that one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, and you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and then you got your father's, brothers, nephews, cousins, former roommate Deborah's login for your preferred streaming service. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way where you can get all the entertainment that you love without any of the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Directv Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can catch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no more need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, besides not having to use Deborah's login, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Directv Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So getting into the Falcons game summary, and the quick summary is, the Falcons couldn't stop the run, and without Kyle Pitts having a big game, they couldn't do much offensively either. But for those of you that did miss the game or just need a refresher of the few highs and the many lows on Sunday's 19-13 loss to Carolina, it looked like the game was going to get off to a very auspicious start for the Falcons on the first snap of the game, with Carolina getting the first possession and running back Chuba Hubbard fumbling. Deion Jones forced it. It was recovered by rookie defensive end Ade Ogundeji. But unfortunately, the Falcons weren't able to take advantage of that favorable field position and that turnover to start the game, with Lee Smith getting beat on a speed rush by Hassan Reddick for a sack that cost him yardage. And so the Falcons wound up settling for a 46-yard field goal from Younghoe Koo to take a 3-0 lead. The Panthers went back to Hubbard and the running game on the ensuing drive and were able to convert a pair of third down passes over the middle to rookie tight end Tommy Trimble. They then ran it 9 times on that 15-play drive with the goal of establishing the run as a way to take pressure off of quarterback Sam Darnold, who's been struggling over the last month without Christian McCaffrey in the lineup. And the Panthers were successful doing so, moving the ball all the way down to the Falcons' 11-yard line. But then Darnold's third down pass was batted down by Ogundeji, and the Panthers were forced to settle for a 29-yard field goal to tie it up. So the Falcons' red zone defense, the bend but don't break defense, stepped up at the end, but was getting gashed throughout that drive. And, the Panthers, when we're talking about the note of establishing the run overall, the Panthers absolutely did that in this game. They rushed for 203 yards on the ground on 47 rush attempts compared to 25 passes. And the Falcons' run defense, which had been soft all game long, got exposed in this game, has been soft all season long, got exposed in this game. But the thing that had often bailed out the Falcons' lacking defense, especially in the previous weeks, had been their offense getting a lead early in the game and forcing teams to play catch up, which meant those teams had to abandon the run. And this was not obviously the case for the Falcons this past Sunday against Carolina, although the Falcons did hold a lead for the vast majority of the first half. After the Panthers tied up the game 3-3, Falcons would be able to move the ball at the end of the first quarter and the beginning of the second quarter with an 8-play, 61-yard scoring drive, capped off by another Cordero Patterson touchdown, where he basically, Matt Ryan checked the ball down. We've seen this so many times this year where it's like, how are the Falcons maximizing Cordero Patterson? Just check the ball down to him and let him go to work. And he did it once more on a 15-yard score where he made a defender miss and then dove for the end zone to give the Falcons a 10-3 lead. On the ensuing Panthers drive, a 23-yard completion to DJ Moore over the middle got Carolina in scoring position, and they wound up settling for another field goal, a 51-yarder from Zane Gonzalez to cut Atlanta's lead to 10-6. Then the Falcons' next possession saw them need to get a third down conversion. They were able to get that thanks to a pass interference penalty against Stephon Gilmore while he was covering Kyle Pitts. That would largely be the only negative play that Stephon Gilmore had in this game when it came to covering Kyle Pitts. More on that later. But then later in that drive, the Falcons needed a 4th-and-1 conversion. They were able to get it on a quick screen to Cordero Patterson, but 3 plays later, Matt Ryan missed Panthers linebacker Shaq Thompson, undercutting a throw over the middle to tight end Hayden Hurst. And Thompson snagged the interception, and Carolina took over at their 25-yard line. Fortunately, a couple of drop passes thwarted Carolina's momentum from taking advantage on that turnover. And the Falcons on the third down dialed up pressure from Foye Oluokun and were able to deliver a hit on Sam Darnold, and that forced him to overthrow and open Amir Abdullah, who had ran past Stephen Means on a wheel route. That would have been a big play, but Darnold missed that throw thanks to the pressure. So after Carolina punted the ball back to Atlanta with 1:37 left in the games, the Falcons had a 3-and-out. Offense struggling again, punted it right back to Carolina with just 18 seconds left in the half. And if you thought, oh, it's 18 seconds, there's no way the Falcons defense is going to give up points in this game. Well, think again, you don't know the Falcons defense well enough. So it basically took 2 plays, 6 seconds. Carolina was able to move the ball 30 yards into Falcons territory. And with time expiring in the first half, we're able to get a 57-yard field goal from Zane Gonzalez, and that cut Atlanta's lead to 10-9. But the Falcons, getting the ball at the start of the second half, had an opportunity to sort of break this game wide open. And that first possession in the second half ended with a sack. And then Carolina continued to be committed to the running game, especially in the third quarter, starting out their next possession with 5 straight runs, gaining 38 yards. That included a 20-yard scramble by Sam Darnold on a rollout. Darnold's first pass was a deep shot to Robbie Anderson over the middle, but Falcon safety Eric Harris blasted him with a hard hit to break up that reception. That was about the only positive play. So Carolina went back to running the football, running it, the next 5 times on their next 9 plays and getting down to the 5-yard line. But once again, the Falcons bend but don't break defense held once more, forced a 23-yard field goal from Carolina, and that gave Carolina their first lead of the game with 3.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. A roughing the passer penalty on Brian Burns gave the Falcons 15 yards on the ensuing possession. And the Falcons were unable to carry that momentum into the fourth quarter with a critical drop by Kyle Pitts on a great throw by Matt Ryan off of a rub route down the sideline. Then, of course, the Falcons' luck got only worse because that drop pass and failed third down conversion forced them to have to settle for a 45-yard field goal from Younghoe Koo. And then Younghoe Koo missed his first kick of the season. So, of course, Carolina goes right back to running the football. Amir Abdullah taking his first 3 carries for 18 yards, followed by 3 runs by Chuba Hubbard for 10 yards. Then Abdullah beat Deion Jones on a third down option route for 11 yards before the Panthers got another third down conversion on an 11-yard scramble by Sam Darnold. And then on the very next play, the Panthers called a QB sweep to Darnold, but after he gained 8 yards, and got inside the Falcons' 5-yard line, Foye Oluokun blasted him and Darnold was forced to exit the game with a concussion. PJ Walker, their backup quarterback, entered the game, and it looked like the Falcons' red zone defense would step up once more and force Carolina to settle for 3 points. There was a delay of game penalty that backed up Carolina after they failed to punch the ball in on the next 2 plays with Walker in the game. But then Chuba Hubbard basically said, I'll do it myself, and scored on a 6-yard score. And that gave Carolina a 19-10 lead with 6.5 minutes left in the game. The Falcons offense continued to struggle with a 3-and-out, thanks to an overthrow on a deep shot to Kyle Pitts. And then Yetur Gross-Matos beating rookie left guard Jalen Mayfield for a sack on 3rd down. Carolina then focused on milking clock with 5 minutes left in the game. Were punting the ball back to the Falcons, and the Falcons run defense decided, better late than never. They started to actually get stops at this point in the game, 55 minutes into the game, and forced a 3-and-out. And then the Falcons offense got the ball back with 3 minutes to go. And it looked like the Falcons were starting to move the ball, and there was a chance, you're sitting there. If they can score quickly with Younghoe Koo and his onside kick ability, the Falcons might have a chance to pull off the impossible and be on the opposite end of a late game collapse for once. But unfortunately, even though Matt Ryan and Tajay Sharp seemed to be connecting a couple of times, Carolina dialed up pressure once Atlanta was at Carolina's 30, and Matt Ryan was forced to kind of throw off his back foot on a throw to Kyle Pitts over the middle. It was underthrown, and Stephon Gilmore was easily able to undercut it and pick it off, and that pretty much sealed the Carolina victory. The Falcons would force another 3-and-out, get the ball back, and then settle for a 53-yard field goal with like 21 seconds left in the game from Younghoe Koo, hoping that an onside kick, that mojo from previous years, would allow them to recover and give them one last shot to maybe score a touchdown in the final seconds. But Koo's onside kick was recovered by Robbie Anderson, and Carolina left Atlanta with a victory. So that's the 19-13 final score, and we'll get more into the game grades as well as talking about what the Falcons need to do, given the expectation that now Calvin Ridley is, sidelined for a while. But before we get into all of that, guys, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen of the day. And while I have all things covered when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, you definitely want to keep it locked for what's going to happen around the rest of the league. While the Falcons may not necessarily look like a team gearing up for a postseason run, there are several other teams that may be in that position, and Locked On NFL will have you covered with that, with a second half of the season preview as well as a live trade deadline show. Certainly there have been rumors surrounding Hayden Hurst being shopped, or at least teams calling about Hayden Hurst. So check out Tuesday's live Locked On NFL live show between 3 and 5 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, November 2nd, on the Locked On NFL YouTube page by subscribing to Locked On NFL on YouTube. So it is Halloween, and I know you guys probably will try to indulge in some candy tonight to wash this bitter taste of a Falcons defeat out of your mouth. And you'll probably indulge in a lot of candy, not only tonight, but tomorrow and the rest of the week until supplies last. But there's a healthier way that you can get that great taste of candy in your mouth, and you don't necessarily have to settle for a huge amount of calories. That is, of course, Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. Built Bar comes in a variety of delicious flavors. They all taste just like a candy bar, but you're getting less calories, less sugar, but you're getting more protein and fiber. Try their limited time flavor like Paranormal Pumpkin, but if that's not your jam, they also have limited time flavors like Blueberry Muffin, Coconut Marshmallow, Cherry Lime, as well as the same tried and true Built Bar flavors like Peanut Butter Brownie, Cookies and Cream, Salted Caramel, Raspberry, Cherry Garcia, so much more. My personal favorite being Coconut Almond. So go to Built.com right now, order yourself some today. Use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your first order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. So we're in the midst of football season, and while things may not be going well for the Falcons, things are going well elsewhere in the state of Georgia when it comes to sports. And if you want to get a little bit of money in your pocket, the best place to go is, of course, BetOnline, with a new updated website and interface and even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be the number one spot for all sports. head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today with the promo code Locked On, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus. And whether you're taking the Panthers to cover, like I recommended this weekend, or taking the Braves or Hawks or the Georgia Bulldogs, the actual local teams that are actually good, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football, baseball, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage for all the amazing offers available at BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. So when we're giving out grades for the different phases, and we're talking about the pass defense, the rush defense, the pass offense, the rush offense, and special teams, and starting things off with the pass offense, got to give him a D, right? Very rough stuff, very bad game for Matt Ryan. Both interceptions were bad throws / decisions on his part. He did have a couple of nice throws, including that drop by Kyle Pitts in the fourth quarter, but certainly looked off in this game. The pass protection wasn't awful, but it certainly was not good. It seemed like Carolina was effective at getting pressure, and that really disrupted the Falcons' offense. Too many breakdowns. Ryan finished the game being sacked 3 times, and it was hit 9 times, so that's not good. Jake Matthews seemed to have his worst game of the year, giving up a couple of pressures to Brian Burns, from what I could tell. Jalen Mayfield gave up that sack, was late adjusting on the blitz on the Matt Ryan's second interception that caused that pressure up the middle. Lee Smith gave up that first sack. Mike Davis failed to pick up a stunt on the second sack that the Falcons gave up. And we saw the return of the Falcons' dink and dunk offense. Matt Ryan only attempted 4 passes over 15 yards and failed to complete any of them. One of them he should have completed, but again, that was that Pitts drop. Panthers put a lot of Stephon Gilmore on Kyle Pitts, and Gilmore won the matchup. And part of that was owed to the fact that the Falcons basically, from what I could tell, utilized Kyle Pitts primarily as a wide receiver in this game, splitting him out wide quite a bit, and that allowed Gilmore to go one-on-one with him quite a bit. But Pitts finished this game with just 2 catches on 6 targets. Russell Gage did not get a single target in this game. So after we saw a nice return to the lineup last week in their Week 7 win over Miami, where he had a big touchdown on a big play, in that game, we saw basically the Russell Gage that we saw in Week 1, where he was held catchless in that game. Tajay Sharp was the Falcons' best receiver in this game. He led the team with 5 catches, 6 targets for 58 yards. Patterson also had 5 catches in this game, but it was basically a no-show for Kyle Pitts, a no-show for Russell Gage, and very underwhelming performances from the Falcons' offensive line and Matt Ryan, and that leads to a D grade. And we'll talk about how the Falcons can mitigate some of these issues, but, talking about the wide receiver position especially. But if you've been listening to this podcast for really the last, month and a half, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Been saying it since Week 2, but we'll get into that at the end of the show. Let's move on to the run defense. The run offense. I'm giving them a C+. There were a couple decent runs, decent day by Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson. It seemed like Mike Davis was the guy that the Falcons felt had the hot hand. And he got the bulk of the carries early in the game. Maybe they thought this would be a revenge game for him going up against his former team in Carolina. He finished the game leading the team with 44 yards on 9 carries, success rate of 56%. Cordero Patterson had 35 yards on 9 carries, success rate of 44%. And for new listeners to the pod, or people that just need a refresher on what success rate is, I believe it's a more effective way of measuring rushing efficiency than yards per carry, because yards per carry tends to get skewed by long runs or negative runs far too easily. Success rate looks at yards gained based off of down and distance and judges, rushing success on a pass-fail basis. So, for example, yards per carry would tell you that an 8-yard gain on a draw play on a 3rd and 11 was a good run, was more valuable than a 3-yard run on a 3rd and 2 on, a handoff up the middle. But success rate would call one of those a fail, failing to gain the first down on the 3rd and 11 draw. But, the 3-yard gain would be a successful run because you were able to move the chains. So basically success rate is contextualizing yards, because all yards are not equal in that regard. So ideally you want your success rate to be around 45%. That's good. 50% is very good. So Davis and Patterson, for the most part, were efficient in this game. Overall, the Falcons had a success rate on their 18 design runs of 50%. So they were generally solid in this game, but they had to basically abandon the run later in the game. It's hard for me to give them a grade higher than a C+, even though they were mostly effective and efficient in this game. It just wasn't solid enough to really sustain their offense without the support of the passing game. But, I got no hate for the Falcons rushing offense, but it was nothing special in this regard. Moving on to the defense, pass defense, C+. Darnold did not play particularly well. The Falcons also benefited from a handful of drops from Carolina. So it's hard to be too praising on the Falcons pass defense because they got some help from some poor play on Carolina. But for the most part, I felt like they did their jobs. The biggest black eye for the Falcons pass defense was giving up that big play to DJ Moore at the end of the first half that helped get Carolina basically an easy 3 points. But generally speaking, outside of that, Carolina's passing offense was not that effective, even though Carolina was very effective on third downs in this game. And that was an issue that Dean Pease talked about the team needing to improve. Carolina converted almost 60% of third downs, 10 of 17 on third downs. Only 4 of those conversions came via pass completions, right? 2 of them also came on Darnold scrambles, so technically against the pass defense. And once again, the Falcons' issues dealing with a mobile quarterback in this game because of Darnold scrambling reared their ugly head again. Although I think some of that was owed to another issue that Dean Pease talked about last week, which was needing to improve their man coverage. But late in the game, there were a couple of times where it seemed like the Falcons dialed up man coverage, dialed up pressure, but then didn't have anybody account for the quarterback, and Darnold was able to take advantage of that with his legs. So again, not going to sit here and say that the pass defense was good in this game, but the fact that Sam Darnold completed 54% of his passes, only had 129 yards passing, and had a 70 passer rating, it's hard to say that the pass defense didn't at least do what you thought they would do and keep Carolina's pass offense mostly in check. But it's hard for me to give them more than a C+ in this game. But it's borderline. I'm tempted to give them a B-, but it's hard for me to give any area of the Falcons offense, defense, or special teams anything in the B grade because it just seems like mostly C level performances at best. And certainly we're not giving any B's to the run defense because I'm giving them a fat F in this game. There's no other way to slice it. You give up 203 yards rushing, you get an F. Carolina was able to basically run the ball down Atlanta's throat. They had 42 design runs that accounted for 153 of those 203 yards. The rest primarily were Darnold scrambles. And that meant that the Carolina averaged 3.6 yards per carry on those 42 design runs, which looks decent, right? That's part of the reason why I'm talking about yards per carry is misleading. If you look at success rate, there was nothing decent about the Falcons run defense. They got pushed around. Carolina had a success rate of 71% on those 42 design runs. And that includes 6 unsuccessful runs at the very end of the game where Carolina was just basically running out the clock on those last couple of possessions. So prior to that point, on their 36 design runs, Carolina had a success rate of 83%. And again, I told you 50% is good. So 83% is ridiculous. So 75% success rate on the 4 Darnold scrambles. And again, that counts towards the pass defense, but the Falcons run defense wasn't terrible in the first half, right? It wasn't good. Carolina had a success rate of 50% on 16 design runs in the first half, but given what we've seen from this run defense throughout the season, that was the norm. But in the second half, I don't know if they just ran out of gas or what, the Gatorade was spoiled or something. I don't know what was going on with the Falcons defense because Carolina just basically came out in the second half and just pounded the ball down the Falcons' throat. They came out, had successful runs on their first 7 carries in the second half. Falcons then got 1 stop, and then Carolina went back to running the football and had 8 consecutive successful runs heading into the fourth quarter. They got utterly obliterated on the ground in the second half of this game, and some of that's owed to the softness of the defense up front, but I think some of that is owed to the Falcons offense failing to generate enough points to force Carolina to abandon the run. We know that the Falcons run defense has been a problem all year long. Every game I've basically said the run defense wasn't good, but it was, not atrocious. And particularly in the recent weeks, that has largely been due to the Falcons offense being able to score points and forcing teams to abandon a run. I remember that specifically in the Jets game where Michael Carter was having a decent game until the Jets had to basically abandon a run in the second half. I'm sure there's other games that are slipping my mind. The specific circumstances are slipping my mind recently. And it wasn't simply because, the Falcons are just soft up the front. They put Mike Pennell in the game. They put their 330-pound D tackle in this game. He was active on Sunday, and so you can't necessarily blame it. They're too small in the middle. They had their beef there. They're just not good at stopping the run, period. And I'm sure this is not going to hurt the Jordan Davis out of Georgia being mocked to the Falcons in various mock drafts from here on out. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that watch this game and are certainly much more behind the Falcons taking a 2-down nose tackle in round 1 than they were probably 48 hours ago. So we'll see how that goes. But, again, it's not to sit here and pass the buck. And the run defense was terrible. That's why I'm giving them an F. But I certainly think some of it is owed to the Falcons offense not being able to support them, because we just know, based off what we've seen this season, that the Falcons run defense cannot stand on its own, and it needs help from the offense. So again, not shifting the blame from the Falcons run defense to the offense, because again, I'm giving them an F, but need a little bit more from the offense. Moving on to special teams, C-. Funnily enough, this was Dustin Colquitt's best game. He had 2 50-plus yard punts, but of course it would coincide with Younghoe Koo having his worst day of the year. He did a good job as a kickoff guy. All 3 of his kickoffs were touchbacks, but that 45-yard miss was a backbreaker. It was the first miss of the season. I thought there was also some concerns elsewhere on special teams. There was a late punt return by Avery Williams where it looked like he had some daylight to really set up the Falcons in some favorable field position, but kind of looked slow, right? He looked like he had a little bit of a wall that at least he could have gotten another 10 or 15 yards if he had some speed. I know he ran a 4.43 at his pro day, but he was looking like he was running a 4.63 when it came to turning on the Jets on that particular play. And then there was a couple of punts where both punts where Dustin Colquitt had looked like, Carolina got pretty close to blocking those. So that is a concern. So overall, C- for the special teams. Not going to knock them too hard for almost block punts. But it's one of those things where just not a whole lot of positive from the Falcons special teams in this game. So that's where we'll leave it, guys, with the game grades, and we'll revisit the topic I discussed earlier about what do the Falcons do at the wide receiver position now with Calvin Ridley out, presumably for an extended period of time and an indefinite period of time, whether that's a week, whether that's 2 weeks, whether that's the rest of the year, who knows at this point in time. But, how do they solve this issue? Well, it's the same thing, they should have done 6 weeks ago, Pinky. Try to sign John Brown or Marvin Hall. So we saw Marvin Hall work out for the team this past week. The Falcons chose to sign a D tackle to their practice squad instead of that wide receiver. Maybe they saw the Falcons' poor run defense coming. So that's why they signed the defense tackle, but they need to potentially revisit that. John Brown was cut from the Broncos practice squad a week ago as well. So he's once again available. And both of these guys could give the Falcons the much needed speed that they need to get at that wide receiver position. Because, we've been talking about the same issue for several weeks. And when you're having games where Tajay Sharp is your best wide receiver, that is going to create major, major problems for you. And so we've talked about this, for a while now. It seemed to at least go away for a week because Russell Gage had that big play down the field. But wide receiver has been a major problem for this team all year long for the most part. They just have not gotten enough production from that position group. I wonder why. I shouldn't be sarcastic. They got rid of a really good wide receiver this offseason. So that's why I'm being sarcastic when I say that. But that's a subject that nobody wants to talk about. So it's one of those things where, I don't think these problems are going to go away. I think a lot of these issues can be mitigated, not necessarily solved. It's not like all their issues are going to magically go away if they just go out there and sign John Brown or Marvin Hall. But I do think it will help this offense if they can add a speed wide receiver. We saw today Tajay Sharp try to go deep, didn't work. Matt Ryan couldn't connect with Kyle Pitts, and basically, Pitts has basically been their vertical threat in the offense, and we didn't get to see that on Sunday, and we saw their offense continue to suffer. This has been a problem throughout the season. We'll continue to see this offense struggle when they can't push the ball down the field and basically become this dink and dunk offense. We saw this earlier in the season. We're going to keep seeing this. This is not something that's just, that was just an outlier or whatever the case may be. I think this continues to be an issue. And whether, Ridley's potential indefinite absence winds up being the straw that breaks the camel's back, that's going to lead the team to push them to go out there and get the wide receiver that, myself and others have been clamoring for now, 6 weeks. We'll see what happens this week. But, this to me is relatively to a lot of the other issues, the run defense, maybe with the exception of the punting position, where it does seem like you can just go out there and get a competent punter. But, again, shout out to Dustin Colquitt for doing his job this week. one of the 2 games where the Falcons punter has done their job. But outside of that one spot, it does seem like of the team's issues, this wide receiver issue is relatively speaking the easiest problem to fix. And not to say I told you so, but I do recall distinctly, I think the week leading up to the London game in week 5, talking about, hey, look at how long it took Wayne Gallman to get up to speed in this offense. Look how long it took the Falcons to sign Mike Pennell to the practice squad and activate him. It was 3 to 4 weeks for both of those guys. And I basically made the statement then, if the Falcons signed a wide receiver today, at that point in time, if it took them 3 to 4 weeks to pick up this offense, they might be ready for this Carolina game. They might be ready for the Saints game. So we're sitting here wondering like, hey, I told you so. But again, they couldn't have predicted Calvin Ridley's absence at that point in time. So again, it's not to blame Calvin Ridley, but this was a need even when Calvin Ridley was healthy and playing, right? This was an issue the first couple of weeks when none of this Ridley stuff was even on the horizon. But this, we'll just sort of have to see if the Falcons decide that this is the week they're going to finally address it. So with that being said, that will do it for us here with Locked On Marvin Hall, or Locked On John Brown, as we have been, several times over the last month plus. So that's going to leave it, guys. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. If you need to binge some candy, hopefully you got some Built Bars, but no one's going to blame you if you decide to load up on calories to make yourself feel good. Go Braves. We'll see if they can take care of business on Sunday to close out this World Series. So that's going to do it here with us. Go check out Locked On Braves if you can. Also available on YouTube. You also should check out Peacock and Williamson to get the lowdown on all the things that happen on Sunday around the NFL, one of the national shows here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can get insight and analysis from NFL analyst Brian Peacock, as well as former NFL scout Matt Williamson. So go check out Peacock and Williamson, free and available on all podcast platforms. So guys, I appreciate you for tuning in for another episode of Locked On Falcons. We'll be back tomorrow with a guest to talk more about Calvin Ridley and what's next for the Falcons on the football field. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I hope you have a great Halloween. Until then.